Hello, Pirate Dave here. It is another Friday, which means it's another Phantom Daily story. This time, the fourth daily story, Little Toma, coming from September 20th, 1937, which means it's about 5 months after the start of the previous story, War in the Jungle. To quickly recap that story, the Phantom heard some war drums off in the distance. Turns out there was a diamond prospector named Smiley that started a war amongst the tribes so that he could get access to mineral deposits on tribal land. The Phantom thwarts him. He runs off. He runs into Diana Palmer, who's returned to Bengala to find the Phantom, kidnaps Diana Palmer. The Phantom chases them both down and brings Smiley to justice and brings him to terminal justice. He ends Smiley, which is a bit controversial early in the Phantom's career, but significant, of course. Diana, after seeing how important the Phantom is to the jungle, decides to leave him a Dear John letter, leaves in the middle of the night, leaves him heartbroken, leaves him leg broken, in fact. She doesn't break his legs. He breaks a leg by chasing after her. That said, daily story number 4, Little Toma, is significant in that it is really disconnected from that story. The Phantom doesn't start the story with a broken leg, for example. This story could take place along the Phantom timeline at any point, even before he met Diana. It's not at all about developing the Phantom, really. It uses his mythos, of course. He's the main character. He's the focus, even if the plot revolves around Little Toma. However, you could actually replace him with pretty much any pulp character, and make this just a pretty straightforward, faithful pulp mystery story. Let's go ahead and get right into it. And we start on a jungle tribe. I don't think we get the name of this particular tribe. It's a very rare occasion where we won't. We'll learn the names of many tribes that some of them will never be recalled again. I think the Aussie way from last week won't be recalled again. But this tribe is unnamed. And we meet Little Toma. If Little Toma looks a little bit Caucasian to you, don't worry, that's gonna that's gonna be revealed. The Phantom is visiting the village, and Little Toma's father says, you can't see the Phantom. The Phantom's going to eat you if he sees you, so you got to hide. It's weird, but okay. Little Toma doesn't know anything about the Phantom, and he trusts his father. But his curiosity gets the best of him, and when the Phantom visits to the village, Little Toma sneaks out to catch a peek of him, and that's where he runs into Devil. He doesn't know Devil is the Phantom's dog, decides to just play with him. Meanwhile, the Phantom's on his way out of the village and calls for Devil to follow him, which causes Little Toma to follow Devil, and that's when the Phantom discovers Little Toma. The Phantom, of course, is no fool. He recognizes a Caucasian child, and understandably, the local tribe may not know what one looks like. But after washing him up a bit, he discovers and confirms he is, in fact, a white boy. While he's been investigating Little Toma, his father has run off into the jungle, and he's trying to make his way back to a place called Frasertown, which geographically puts the Bengala region in the Southeast Asia region, which we'll get into a little bit more as the story goes on as confirmation. Frasertown was a small neighborhood in Bengaluru. The Phantom catches up with the father. He intimidates him into telling him the story of his son, and the father reveals that he used to work for a family called the Reynolds. The missus died when the baby was born, and their housekeeper, Stella, took care of Little Toma. One day, the father left in a hurry, and while the father was gone, Stella gave Little Toma to the tribal to take into the jungle. And that's where the story ends. He doesn't know why it happens. He just gets a check every month to make sure that he doesn't reveal that Little Toma is alive. The Phantom uses that check, the letter that it comes in, to find out that it comes from Pennyfields in Limehouse. Limehouse is a neighborhood in England, about 2 miles east of the Tower of London along the River Thames. It's just really weird, exact geographical recollection the Phantom immediately gets. And so, knowing where he needs to go to solve the mystery of why this little Caucasian baby was left to be raised in the jungle, the Phantom takes Little Toma as his ward and sets off for London aboard a ship. While he's on that ship, the crew starts to discover, led by a crewmate by the name of Limey, that passenger in 14, he is the Phantom. You might want to remember that room number 14 because the Phantom seems to book that room quite often. The jungle the jungle tribe crew descendants are familiar with the Phantom. They believe he's bad luck on the high seas, so Limey organizes a mutiny to throw the Phantom overboard. Meanwhile, the captain isn't as superstitious as any of them, so he works out a plan with the Phantom, kicks over a rope. Phantom climbs up in the middle of the night and meets back up with Limey, and punishes him for throwing him overboard. The captain's like, "Ah, man, people are so superstitious. They thought you were the Phantom. Who are you?" He's just like, "I'm the Phantom." This was, again, the daily story number 4 for the Phantom. So Leafolk's still playing around with how cavalier the Phantom is with his identity and all that. Here, obviously, he doesn't care that much. Eventually, this disguise that he gets will receive a name, but we're not there yet. He doesn't have a name other than the Phantom. So the Phantom disembarks in London, and word spreads throughout the city that the Phantom is there from all the sailors that have returned to port and told the rumors of what happened aboard the ship. And those rumors have met the ear of this strange man who tracks down Limey, the guy who led the mutiny. Limey tells him the story, and this guy knows of the Phantom. He's suspicious. He meets back up with this woman, Stella, and he's brought the kid with him. This guy knows little Tommy, and he knows the Phantom is from the same region where little Tommy was raised, and so he puts 2 and 2 together, and he's like, he's here as part of what's going on with little Tommy. And Stella's like, well, first of all, the Phantom's not real, shut up. Second, you're just being superstitious, calm down. Meanwhile, the Phantom's hooked up an apartment in London and hooks up little Tommy with a tutor while he investigates the rest of London, specifically Pennyfields in Limehouse. Phantom goes to the postmaster, asks him, "Can you tell me how long it takes for mail to reach the Upper Thailand district in India?" This once again affirms where Bengala is at this point in the story. It's in Southeast Asia. As the stories will go on throughout the years, Bengala will pretty firmly be located on the eastern coast of Africa, around where Somalia and Kenya are. So it can be a little bit confusing reading current stories and understanding that it is without a doubt an African nation. But these early stories and in the Billy Zane movie, it is more of a Southeast Asia nation. But anyway, he inquires about the upper district in Tailani, and he's like, well, there's a woman that sends a letter there every single month. That's quite a coincidence. And she just happens to come in. It's Stella, and she's coming in to send her letter. And the postmaster spills the tea. He's like, hey, by the way, somebody was just asking about the same exact region you send a letter to, specifically from this little post office in this little street in London to this place in India. I just love that this completely gets exposed by the secondary character that we'll never see again, right? Sometimes stories don't work out this way, right? Things just sort of happen. The plot develops just around the main characters. This guy just completely spills everybody's business. Phantom's already taken off by this point, and so Stella is like, well, maybe the Phantom, there is something to this. It's not just a coincidence that somebody's looking for the same place I send a letter to every single month. The Phantom has followed Stella back to her place. He infiltrates her home, wants to talk with her. Surprisingly, she doesn't want to talk to the Phantom. It's really, really weird. So he decides to kidnap her. Meanwhile, Fred and some of his thug friends have come home as well, and they're chasing the Phantom onto the roof. Understandably, by the way, from the optics, he's kidnapping his wife at this point. The Phantom fights off the thugs, and he makes his escape by jumping into the back of a truck filled with filled with pillows. I don't know how common this trope was by this point in 1937. I wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that it was created by Lee Falk. I assume he got it from somewhere else, maybe like Buster Keaton or something. The Phantom takes Stella back to Tommy, assuming that maybe Tommy will recall her in some way since she was you know, his caregiver at one point. She breaks down at seeing Tommy. She reveals that Tommy was a little baby, she got a letter from Fred. Fred told her to get rid of the kid. She didn't have the heart to kill him, so she paid off the tribal to take him into the jungle, and she's been paying off the tribal every month since then. She doesn't know any more than that. Meanwhile, Fred, having lost his wife to the Phantom, he's on the phone with Mr. X, and Fred's no longer having any part of this. He's not risking his neck anymore for this Phantom. Who is Mr. X? We still don't know what's going on here. We're just getting these breadcrumbs. Stella, puts on the wet works. She says she doesn't know anymore. Phantom lets her go. She was just faking it the whole time. What a wench, right? But the Phantom immediately knows that she was faking it too. I love that little sort of turnabout there. But he already knows that he needs to go after Fred now. Fred's the one who knows the next part of the story. Meanwhile, Fred is being protected by this gangster named Tai Lo, who's associated through Mr. X, presumably. Tai Lo is an Asian gangster, so he has this sort of Asian dialect to his dialogue. You can see, some of the words missing. And why not? My boys guard you. You have nothing to fear from the Phantom. My boys take care of you. I note this because while he does have that sort of way of speaking, that stereotypical cadence to it, physiologically, he doesn't have an overly stereotypical look, right? He does have the sort of slanted eyes, but he's not wearing Mandarin clothing. He's not, he doesn't have a Fu Manchu or buck teeth or anything like that. It is possible that he's being depicted more in the way that like a Caucasian actor might portray an Asian character. But I just thought that was interesting that he's not this really cartoonish Asian guy, even though he's a bad guy here. So it's not like he's a good it's not like he's a good depiction either. The Phantom infiltrates Tai Lung's business front and he makes off with Fred, and he starts to get more of the story from Fred. And it turns out that Fred was contacted 7 years ago in Calcutta. He was already a criminal. He was hiding out, and the Mr. X told him he had to stop Reynolds from getting back to England. All he had to do was stop him, just intimidate him into giving up his trip, right? But apparently the intimidation goes wrong on a stormy night on the boat, and Fred knocks him out and knocks him overboard, and he accidentally kills him. Doesn't mean to, but that is what that is. And but why? Why was he told to stop Reynolds from getting to London? Oh, and a gun reaches out from. Let's take a moment here to pause. So remember, these are daily stories, right? So you're getting, I think, 3 panels. It might be 4 panels, but you're getting 3 or 4 panels every day, and this is where the panel ends for the day. Oh my goodness, a gun out from the shadows. The very next day, you basically get the same 3 panels. This would have irritated me to no end. But if you did get 4 panels, I guess it makes sense because we see that Fred gets shot. And maybe you could think like, oh, maybe the Phantom's going to get shot. As far as like the in story goes, that probably would have made more sense, Gunman, to shoot the Phantom. But Fred is silenced from telling the Phantom anymore. Devil takes off after the gunman, and Phantom takes off after Devil, and he finds Devil. Oh, our good boy is knocked out. Whoever the gunman was knocked out Devil. Lee Falk likes to use Devil for sympathy a lot, but I love that he gives Devil so much to do. The Phantom goes back to Stella, lets her know that her husband's dead, was shot by a gunman. She gives him a little bit more information. She lets him know the phone number that Fred used to contact Mr. X. And the Phantom leaves Devil with Tommy to recover, and Devil's out of the story, unfortunately. So the Phantom has a phone number now, and you might think that he comes up with some clever plan to track down the information on the phone number. No, he just goes to the phone company and puts a gun on the telephone operator and tells her, "Give me the information or else." This is, I don't know if there's an example of like a more modern character doing something like this. It's so dastardly, right? We know that he's not going to do anything to this poor woman, but geez, what a way to further the story, you know. Meanwhile, we get these couple of panels of the Phantom sneaking into this bedroom of Inspector Fogg. This is very interesting because we don't know who Inspector Fogg is at this point. And the very next day, we're just introduced to these new characters. Lord Revel of Revel Manor. Sorry, I bumped the camera there. He's there with his daughter, doesn't approve of her going out. This has nothing to do with the story, right? This is just two characters having a well-to-do conversation. Meanwhile, Inspector Fogg shows up at Lord Revel's estate. And that's when Inspector Fogg recounts the story of what happened last night. So we get this kind of weird time jump to the night previous, and then the next morning, and then back to the previous night, just for a couple of panels. I just thought it was interesting. I don't know how often you saw that sort of like narrative time jump storytelling during this era. So Inspector Fogg lets him know that this masked man told him to investigate Lord Revel, and he's just making a light of it. Oh, really? Well, I guess you have to take me in, huh? Do I look like such a desperado? The Phantom completely predicted that Inspector Fogg wasn't going to take it seriously. He comes out of the curtains. It's like, I knew you wouldn't, but I have evidence. Whoever shot Fred would have had a wound from Devil because Devil attacked him. And he checks Lord Revel, but Lord Revel doesn't have any wounds. Lord Revel did not shoot Fred. Meanwhile, the Phantom's in a Santa Claus outfit and he's giving out toys. Giving out toys to Tommy. Why is this happening? Well, it's happening because it's, of course, December 25th. So we just get a daily break. And I guess this confirms the question from earlier. So you're getting 4 panels a day, by the way. Just a quick Christmas break and we're back into the story. The Phantom is taken off from Revel Manor. Lord Revel doesn't like it whatsoever. Ty, now listen carefully. So Ty Lo, remember, Ty Lo was the one protecting Fred earlier. So we can all confirm that Lord Revel is in fact Mr. X. Meanwhile, what was Lord Revel on the phone for? Well, back at the Phantom's New York apartment, Ty Lo shows up, tells the tutor, "Oh, I've come for the boy." And the tutor's like, "I've got orders that he's not supposed to leave." And he's like, "Well, I've got other orders for you." And just knocks him out. And Ty takes off with little Tommy. Phantom returns to the apartment, finds the tutor, finds out that little Tommy's gone. And the Phantom is just, he's in quite a state. Meanwhile, Inspector Fogg is caught up with the Phantom, and he's ready to take him in. Understandably so, right? The Phantom held him at gunpoint, demanding that he inspect a British noble. Phantom fights off Inspector Fogg. We get this really awesome panel. I really love that one. Dumps some trash on him and escapes from the scene. And his immediate thought is to go back after Ty Lo. Ty Lo must know what's going on. And we get this really, really awesome aura-filled banner, blood in his eye. The Phantom is ready to tear Ty Lo apart. It's a very cool silent sequence for the next couple of days, it would have been, of the Phantom just dismantling Ty Lo's thugs. He gets a shot off on Ty Lo, and Ty Lo is gravely injured. He acknowledges the Phantom's strength, and he lets him know, like, where else would Tommy be, of course? Back where you were, Revel's orders. And so the Phantom realizes that Revel is in fact involved in this. He takes Ty Lo to the authorities. Meanwhile, back at Lord Revel's manor, his daughter has been hearing some crying from the gatehouse out back. And Lord Revel's immediately like, "Shut up, you harlot! Go to bed. You don't hear anything." And she's like, "Well, he's never talked to me before. That's really weird." Lord Revel's just super, super frustrated by this point, right? Because his whole plan is unraveling, and we still don't know his plan, right? So he's like, I've got to go take a walk. There's no children crying. Shut up. And so he's back, making his way back to the gatehouse. This is very ominous because by this point, as the reader, we're assuming like he's got one option now, and that's to kill this little boy. This is, whatever's going on with it. Apparently, Tommy being alive is what's going to expose it. Phantom has made his way back to Revel Manor, and he runs into the daughter. Uh, Again, it's important to reorient what the Phantom is in 1937. He's still this masked criminal looking guy. There aren't superheroes. Superheroes aren't he's the first superhero. There's no Superman, there's no Batman, there's none of these guys. It's the Phantom, and he looks like a bandit. So everybody assumes he's a bandit, right? He convinces the daughter though that he's not a bandit. He's looking for this little boy, and the daughter's like, "Oh, well, that's weird because I just heard a child, and I usually don't hear I usually don't hear children crying in the manor." And she's like, "Well, my father walked back that way." So meanwhile, Lord Revel encounters Tommy. Presumably he's there to kill him, but we find out, "I thought I could, but I can't. You're a spunky lad, Reynolds through and through." And the Phantom walks in on them. So for some reason, Revel has decided not to kill Tommy. But we still don't know what the heck is going on. Meanwhile, the Phantom and Tommy are reunited. Tommy is safe. Lord Revel's lies are about to be exposed. Next week, the mystery of Tommy explained. And that's it, I mean, I guess if you want to find out the mystery of Tommy, you can pick up this book. It's usually about 18 to... I'm just kidding. we'll get right back into the mystery of Tommy explained here. Make your assumptions now, because the assumptions I had when I first read it weren't exactly correct. So we find out that Lord Revel is the uncle of Tommy. Tommy is his nephew. Lord Revel had some debts with specifically Ty Lo and Fred. I think this development's a little too convenient, but let's go ahead and move on. It turns out that Lord Revel was expecting to inherit the estate of his late uncle, but his younger brother was named the heir instead, Reynolds, Tommy's father. The terms of the inheritance was that the younger brother had to return to England within 6 months. So this scheme is worked out where Fred's going to go intimidate Reynolds into not returning to London, but it turns out that Fred accidentally kills him instead. And so we know the rest of the story. Tommy is dumped into the jungle. He's raised by the jungle folk. And Lord Revel's estate passed to him. The scheming, slimy guy that eventually couldn't pull off the ultimate evil by the end of it. Meanwhile, sorry, I kind of skipped that panel. His daughter heard the whole thing, heard the whole story, and she's just absolutely wrecked that her father could do something so dastardly, and she doesn't know really what to do about it. But the Phantom is like, well, you have family. Somebody needs to take care of Tommy, and he needs to live, in London. He needs to live where he belongs. And so the Phantom and Tommy have a heartfelt goodbye. And that's it. Tommy's returned to his estate, the rightful heir of Revel Manor, and the mystery of Little Toma is solved. Once again, this story does not require the Phantom. It could be any pulp here. It's just a really faithful... It's not bad. It's a pretty good and intriguing and compelling mystery. And in fact, I didn't recall a lot of the details rereading it. I had read it a couple of years ago. I couldn't remember exactly what the relationship was between Lord Revel and Tommy and Fred and all the characters. So I was uncovering it once again as I was reading it. But maybe that should also tell you, like, for me at least, how forgettable it is if your focus is the Phantom's development and, reading more about the Phantom as a character, especially if you're going back to a 90-year-old story to do that. Again, this will be the first story where that happens. There'll be more stories as we go on that are disconnected from the Phantom's larger development as the ruler over Bengala, or his relationship with Diana Palmer, or any of the other specific things that really make the Phantom the character that he is, rather than your typical pulp or superhero. And that will start next week with Prisoner of the Himalayas. We'll see a return of Diana Palmer. We'll see a new character introduced that will become, a mainstay throughout the rest of the story as well. For now, I hope you enjoyed this one. I think that this is more video focused than the previous stories. I would really recommend fans of the Phantom read Daily Stories 1, 2, and 3. This is one that you could probably skip unless you're a real big pulp story fan. You really like noir mysteries and things like that. Otherwise, then I'm sorry that I spoiled it for you. I was Pirate Dave. I'll see you next week with The Prisoner of the Himalayas. Until then, take care. Bye.